Alright, everybody, gather around. Today we'll be talking about Charmed Episode 4. Roll it! Dead Man Dating. This episode was written by Javier Grillo and then directed by Richard Compton. It was aired on October 28th, 1998. It has 6.2 million viewers and it has an IMDb rating of 8.3 out of 10. Buckle up because we have a lot of characters today. We have Prue, Piper, Phoebe, Andy, Mark's mother, we have Mr. and Mrs. Corey, we have Tony and his men, we have the manager, a lot of characters. And then, if you will, I don't want to call him demon for the day, but like for supernatural entity of the day is Yama. The episode opens up with Andy visiting Prue at home, chatting about their date last night, that it went well. Andy offers Prue a birthday present. Prue tells him that my birthday's not until next week, but Andy tells her, oh, this is kind of like a preview, and gives Prue a little box. Prue opens the box, and she sees a key that she questions Andy about, and Andy tells her that it is for a room for a trip that he's planning at a spa for Friday night. Prue is surprised and kind of wary about it, and Andy tells her that don't worry, we have adjoining rooms. He also tells her that he just wants to be with her. Now we cut to Mark. He's a young Chinese man celebrating his birthday. He's leaving the house, holding balloons, and his mom worries about him and warns him about the dangers that lure out there in the world, and she urges him to take a protection amulet with him because it's his birthday. And there's a lot of spiritual stuff connected to the Chinese culture that is really interesting in the scene, but he assures her that he can take care of himself, he's fine, blah 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 blah, and he leaves. So as he's walking, he's greeting some people, and he goes through an alley. Mind you, it is the middle of the day, right? So it's bright outside. It's not dark. He comes across like a gang of people, and I guess the main person of that gang takes out a gun and shoots him on his birthday. And you did it at my birthday dinner. Like, what? In the middle of the day. Out in the open. Insane. So we see Mark is on the ground, and his spirit, his ghost, comes out of his body. The men, from the gang, throw gasoline on it and lights him on fire. And after they run away. This, 4 episodes in, we already have established that this show is going to have a very high kill count. Because the first episode we have a bunch of people died because of Jeremy. Then in the second episode, we have, Javna taking a lot of women's youth. The third episode, we don't have that many people die. I don't think we have anybody, but, very high kill counts. Very gruesome. Now, we're back at the house, and we see Piper preparing some invitations, putting some glitter and sparkles in an envelope. Phoebe comes in. We find out that they're planning a birthday party for Prue's birthday that is coming up soon. Piper asks Phoebe if she will get Prue a present, and Phoebe's like, yeah, and Piper's like, oh, is it going to be the same as the last, 3 gifts you've gotten her? And Phoebe's like, what is that supposed to mean? And Piper's like, oh, your usual birthday gift, it is a 3-day-old, birthday card. And Phoebe tells Piper, no, I will get her an actual present. And when Piper asks her, when did you find the money? Prue walks in and interrupts the conversation. Prue tells her sisters that Andy asked her to spend the weekend with him, and they're kind of trying to convince Prue not to go because they decided to take it slow, and all of that looks very suspicious, and Prue is skeptical, very much asks her sisters, are you planning a birthday party for me? And that's why you're convincing me not to go. Piper's like, what birthday party? No, we're not planning a birthday party for you. Prue basically is like, you know how much I hate surprises, you know how much I hate birthday parties. Their reasoning is, you decide to go slow with Andy, and you go into this weekend is going to solidify your relationship, basically. Prue exits. Piper and Phoebe have another conversation. Piper tells Phoebe that if you had sent the invitations on time, we wouldn't have to worry about this. Yada, yada, yada. So then we cut to Phoebe. She's at a hotel, and she's interviewing for a job as a psychic. So the manager is asking her, what kind of psychic you are? What can you do? And he doesn't take it seriously, right? Is just like a cheap parlor trick. Obviously, we know that Phoebe can actually see the future, but she doesn't tell him that. She does tell him that she's a natural born psychic, and that by touching something or being around somebody can have visions of the future. And the manager doesn't really believe her, so he's kind of walking away and he grabs his shoulder. It's not clear if she's lying or if she actually had a premonition, but basically tells him about he's at dinner with a blonde woman, and then a redheaded woman comes over and starts yelling, confronting them. Oh my god, and tells them that, oh, your wife, and that lands her the job. So then we cut to Piper and Prue on the phone talking, and Prue is still wondering what to do with Andy and if she should go with Andy, and Piper tells her that she should, but she should wait for Saturday, and all this sounds very suspicious because we know her birthday's on a Friday, and Prue asks her again, are you planning a surprise party for me? And Piper's like, no, like Phoebe got you a present, an actual present this time, and she really wants to give it to you on Friday, so don't go on Friday with Andy, go Saturday. And as they're having the conversation, Piper finds a newspaper that has a psychic job like circled, and clocks that, damn, Phoebe is using her powers, she got a job as a psychic, and that's how she's gonna make money. So they hang up. So back at Hotel Neptune with Phoebe, she's doing like a reading or like reading somebody's future, and it's not exactly going as expected. Phoebe's talking about her weight and how she's gaining weight, like some funny gaggy stuff, right? And obviously the patron is upset, and she gets up and is like, give me my money back, basically. And it's like, nope, not refundable. Right. So Piper finds Phoebe at the hotel being a psychic. Piper's worried that Phoebe's using her powers for personal gain. Phoebe tells her that she didn't tell anybody that she's a witch, but they think she's an actual psychic, and how it's not personal gain because I'm not doing it for me, I'm doing it to get a present to Prue. But like the idea of personal gain in this show, it's kind of weird because Phoebe is using her powers at the end of the day to make money, regardless of if it's for her, if it's for her sisters. Like, she's using her gift for personal gain, like to make money, no matter the outcome, right? At the same time, Mark's ghost shows up, and she's like, who's the psychic? And both of the sisters like, oh, I am, she is, right? So he realizes that they can both see him. They're having kind of like a mild argument, if you will, of like, of course we can see you. Like, why wouldn't we? Phoebe's boss comes and tells her that she has to get back to work, while Mark continues to ask them for help. All at the same time, Piper is still talking to Mark, but then we see the manager's perspective and how he cannot see him. So Piper leaves, and Mark is continuing to follow her, tries to explain to her that he's dead and he's been to a bunch of psychics and nobody can see him, and Piper dismisses him. But what solidifies and makes Piper believe that he's actually a ghost is that he's in the middle of the street and a biker goes right through him. So that makes Piper believe that Mark is an actual ghost. So then we cut a Quake. We see Prue walking in, and she finds Andy at Quake having lunch with a woman. And Andy's like, oh, what are you doing here? He's like, oh, like I called your station and they say you will be here. And it's like, who is you, basically? And the lady's like, oh, I'm Susan Trudeau, which Andy's last name is Trudeau. And Prue is like, oh, a sister? Susan's like, no, a wife. And I'm like, huh? Andy has a wife? That's crazy, right? So obviously Prue is upset, walks away, but Andy at the same time is yelling at her, oh, it's ex-wife, like she's not my wife. But Prue's not listening. I get it. And as Andy's like following her, pursuing her, she uses her powers to kind of like push a trolley in their way, and he trips over the trolley and he falls in. So then we'll come back with Mark and Piper. They're in Chinatown, and basically Piper's listening to Mark, trying to help him, trying to find the body. Mark explains to her that my body needs to be buried before Yama catches my soul and takes me with him to hell. Yama is a spirit that does not care about if you're good or bad, how you died, but like he just grabs you, right? And at the same time, they pull up and they find Mark's corpse, like his body. And it's all charted, it's all like burned, and that obviously freaks Piper out. I mean, who wouldn't get freaked out by that? Because you see literally a burned body. So at the same time, Yama himself shows up and is here to take Mark with him. So Mark is like, no, it's too late, just run. And Piper's like, no! She's not being that dramatic, but basically she freezes Yama. This is the first time that I think we see Piper using her powers deliberately. I might be wrong. I feel like the past few times that we've seen Piper, obviously in the first couple of episodes, it has not happened deliberately. Even in the episode before that she freezes the waiter, it seems like it was more of like, oh my god, kind of a moment. But this one is actually like she does it deliberately. And Mark is like, what happened? And Piper's like, oh, do you remember I'm a good witch? I can freeze things basically. And Mark is like, how long does it last? Not long. And they run away. So back at home, Prue tells her sisters that the surprise party is off and they trying to cover it. Mind you, Prue's in the bathroom or showering or something. I don't even know. But she tells her sisters that their surprise party is off and Piper tries to cover it. But Phoebe's like, oh, the restaurant called for the reservation. Side note, in the future episodes, that bathroom that Prue is using to shower, it turns into a closet, which is interesting. I feel like it would be nicer if it stayed a bathroom, but Piper questions Prue, why she seems so upset. And also Phoebe mentioned that, Andy has been calling and the phone is off the hook. Basically, like he's been blowing up the phone. All while Mark walks in and Phoebe makes a comment like, oh, why is the drunk guy from the hotel here? And Piper's like, oh, he's not a drunk. His name is Mark and he's a ghost and we need to help him. Phoebe still doesn't really believe it, nor Prue, and apparently I guess he's watching. He's staring at Prue in her towel. I don't know. Basically, Piper tells them that it's true and that they need to help him because they're the only one that can see him. To prove it, he throws her mug through him. And I'm like, why would you do that? And also your mug is empty, so you're just carrying a mug around the house. So back in the kitchen, they're discussing that they have to go to Mark's family so they can bury him properly so his soul can be saved. And while they're having that conversation, they get interrupted by a phone call that is for Phoebe that basically tells her, get your ass back to work. It's her manager. Like, you have to come back. So then Prue tells Piper that she saw Andy having lunch with his ex-wife the same time that she went to talk to him to agree to go to the spa with him. And the scene ends here. So we're back at Hotel Neptune with Phoebe. She is talking to her manager, and the manager is telling her there's a super rich guy staying in the hotel and that she should read his future, because it would be great money. At the same time, we see a gentleman leaving the bar have left his wallet, and Phoebe's like, hey, sir, you left your wallet, and she grabs it to trying to chase him to give it to him, and she has a premonition of that man. Later we'll find out his name is Mr. Corey, getting hit by a car, a Cadillac. And that is the first time I think we see Phoebe having a longer premonition like that, which is really cool. It's also, her premonitions are in black and white. Back at home, Mark and Piper are having a talk and having a moment. Mark mentions that he still forgets that he's a ghost, and I'm like, fair, you haven't even been dead for 24 hours, but he forgets that he's a ghost. And Piper asks him if ghosts sleep because she was carrying some blankets for him, and Mark mentions that he doesn't even feel cold anymore or hungry, all the basic human needs. Piper apologizes. Mark tells her that it finally starts to sink in what has happened, along with that he is not going to be able to do the things that he used to do anymore, or that he wanted to do, talk to his family dinners, all that jazz. And they share a pretty sweet moment. They start talking about how they both learned how to cook. Mark learned from his father. Piper learned from her grandma, and she became a chef because of that. Mark mentions how, he was told that he will be a great chef, but then he got into a biology program. He's hella smart, basically. And they share a laugh about that. So now we're back with Phoebe at the hotel. And Phoebe finally finds Mr. Corey, and she tries to warn him, basically, right? She asks him if he saw the note that she left at his door, basically saying, do not leave your room, you're gonna die, which is kind of alarming. And he asks her if she gets enjoyment out of scaring people like that. And at the same time, a woman walks up to him, and it's the same lady from her reading from the day before, that, the whole Wade debacle. And basically they get into the elevator to leave. And as they're in the elevator, she tries to explain that she picked up his wallet, and he accuses her of stealing it. Phoebe blurs out that he will die. Again, it did not come out right. I get it. it is also the beginning of Phoebe like trying to help people with her power, which is not easy to explain. Like, oh, I can see the future and you're dying, but like, how do you tell people? She doesn't have experience on how to do that. So it's nice to see like her struggle to explain to somebody like, hey, I am trying to help you. I know you were going to die. Like, please listen to me. But at the same time, Phoebe realizes that he doesn't have his briefcase, and it cannot happen without it. Anyways, Mr. Corey is ignoring her. They click the button in the elevator and the scene ends there. So now we're Buckland with Prue, and she finds flowers on her desk, and Andy, he tries to apologize to her about not telling her that he has a ex-wife. Prue asks him, when were you planning to tell me, before or after we go to the spa retreat? And Andy tells her that he basically hates his ex, and what's so wrong having lunch with somebody you don't hate? How is that so horrible? Which, good point, especially thinking that they're not exclusive right now, if you will, because Prue wanted to take it slow. But I also see her side of the story of like, that is a pretty big thing that you did not tell me. Prue then goes on a whole speech about honesty and being upfront with somebody and telling people the truth. Andy asks her why you're trying to make this whole situation more than what it is, but also asks her what's really like bugging you, like what's really bothering you. He also points out that it seems like he's not the only one keeping secrets, and he storms off, which again, fair, because Prue has been keeping a pretty big secret from him as well. So now we're with Piper and Mark. They're at Mark's mom's house, and Mark is helping Piper to explain in Chinese to his mom, like, what's going on, right? So as Piper's translating and telling Mark's mom, do you know where Mark is, or have you seen Mark? Mark's mom is like, no, I don't know where he is. I haven't seen him since his birthday. So Mark is questioning, like, so they haven't found my body yet? That is very odd. Mark basically tells Piper that you need to tell my mom that I'm dead, like where my body is, so they can have an actual burial for me, so my soul doesn't end up with Yama. But Piper cannot bring herself to tell his mom that he's dead, and kind of gives her a like, oh, like if I see him, I will let you know. And she leaves. So as Piper's walking away, Mark tries to go into the house thinking that he can talk to his mom or like try to talk to his mom, but she has an amulet on the door that repels ghosts, so he's not able to enter. So we're back at the manor. Prue's cleaning the kitchen. Phoebe comes in, asks her if whatever she's going through it's man related, and Prue's like, I don't want to talk about it. Phoebe grabs a pair of gloves. Prue asks her like what's going on, and Phoebe doesn't want to talk about it, and Prue is like, you never clean, like what's up? And Phoebe eventually tells her about the premonition that she has about Mr. Corey getting hit by a Cadillac, especially a pink Cadillac, and she doesn't know how to go about it. She doesn't know what to do about it. She tells Prue how she tried to warn him, but he just thinks she's crazy. So Prue obviously asks her where he is, and Phoebe's like, oh, Hotel Neptune, and Prue is like, what were you doing there? And Phoebe has to confess that she got a job as a psychic there to get Prue a birthday present. And Prue, surprising all of us, is like, no, like you have to go back and you have to protect him. And Phoebe's like, oh, I broke a key in his lock, so he cannot exit his room, so he should be safe until morning. But also questions Prue on how come she's not getting mad that she used, her powers again to get a job or make money. So Prue tells her, like, we're trying to do something good, and now you're going to do something great. I can ask for a better birthday present. And I'm like, okay, Prue, growth. At the same time, Mark and Piper walk in the kitchen, and they turn on the TV. We see that they have found Mark's body, but is identified as Tony, which is the man that we saw shooting Mark at the beginning of the episode, which he's like a Chinatown crime lord. And as they're watching the news, Phoebe gets a premonition of a warehouse, and there are two Chinese characters on the wall that Phoebe writes down on her hand that reveal his location. So the next morning, Mark and Piper go to the warehouse to basically try to take a picture of Tony to show that he's still alive. So as they're walking up the stairs, like, Mark is trying to scare Piper, but that kind of helps her, with the adrenaline. And right outside of the door, there's an amulet. So Mark is like, I can enter. And I'm like, Mark, you're already dead. Like, what's the worst that can happen to you besides being taken by Yama? So Piper takes it off, opens the door. storms in and freezes the room, which is, again, we see her being able to use her power a little more. She puts a newspaper on Tony's hands, takes a picture, but at the same time, the room freezes, so they're running. And the newspaper article that Piper took a picture on Tony was Tony found dead. So they're running outside, they get in the car, they storm off, but as they're driving away, Tony was able to take Piper's license plates number on, and wrote it on his arm. Then we cut the police station. Piper has developed the picture, put it in an envelope, and left it into Andy's mailbox in his office or whatnot, and tells Mark that, he's a great police officer, but Mark does make a comment which is pretty funny on how his afterlife is depending on a cop named Andy, which again, pretty funny, but don't do my man Andy like that. He's good. Basically, Piper's trying to explain that, Andy's a great police officer, and then they can find his body, and then Andy can do some dental work to prove that it's not Tony and it's you, and that she promised to help him, make sure that he goes to the afterlife, safely. And at the same time, Andy pulls up the police station and surprises Piper while she's talking to Mark, but again, Andy cannot see him, so it seems like she's talking to herself. And they're having a conversation, and basically Andy asks Piper, "Oh, did Prue tell you what happened?" And at first Piper says no, but then she's like, "Yeah," and Andy asks for help on what do I do? Piper tells him you just have to let her be and let her basically feel the emotions and she will come around. So Andy gives her a hug and he leaves, and Mark basically tells Piper you're a good human, you're sweet. So after he called her sweet, he told her "Oh, I want to show you something, come with me," basically, or take me somewhere. And in my head I'm like, Lord, last time somebody wanted to show her something, we were fighting for our lives in an abandoned warehouse. So I'm like, Piper, please. At the same time, all that is happening with Piper and Mark, we see Phoebe continue to pursue Mr. Corey, who walks out of the hotel. Again, he's yelling at him please don't exit, you're gonna be a dead man if you exit. And as he's exiting the hotel, she has a flash of the vision again of him getting hit by a pink Cadillac. So she's running outside after him, and he's in the middle of the street, crossing the street, and he drops his briefcase, and we see the Cadillac pulling up and almost hitting him, but Phoebe's able to jump and push him out of the way and to safety. Her premonition was, avoided, so Mr. Corey is alive and well. And as she's getting up, mind you, there's a crowd of people around them, she's like, "That will be $20, not tip included." And I'm like, I know that right, Phoebes. I know that's right. You tell him. You tell him. So at night, Mark takes Piper to his place, and they share a few different sweet moments. There's a book of poetry Mark was reading before he passed. Piper reads out a part of it out loud, and they both like that part. And then Mark tells her, can you, grab that off my bookshelf? And it's a box. She opens it, and there is a bunch of recipes that Mark's grandpa had wrote that his dad translated in English for Mark. And Mark tells her, I want you to have these. And Piper's like, "No, I can't do that. That, they belong to your family." And Mark is like, "This is, as a thank you, this is the only thing I can do to thank you for helping me throughout this whole situation." He tells Piper that, "I want you to cook something out of this, for your sister's birthday." And then tells Piper that we should celebrate our birthday and how important it is to, basically celebrate. So back at the manor, Prue is in her room watching TV. Phoebe points it out that you never watch TV, you never channel surf, if you will. And Prue asks Phoebe if she's okay, and Phoebe tells her that, she was able to save Mr. Corey. She feels very proud of that. She tells Prue that even in her own little way, she was able to make a difference, which is great. And they're having a conversation, and Prue tells her that it's been a week full of surprises. Phoebe asks her what she will do with the whole Andy situation. And Prue tells her very honestly that even though Andy kept something from her, she keeps something from Andy every day, that's something she probably can never tell him. And Phoebe reminds her that, they're the charmed ones and not the doomed ones. Their witchcraft basically does not signify who they are, right? They have lives to live, and that she should go see him and not stop her life because she's a witch. So Mark and Piper return to the manor. Mark wonders what's, beyond the stars, like if he goes to heaven or, when he crosses over, what's waiting for him. And Piper tells him to give her a hint when he gets there. And again, they share a very intimate moment because Mark tells Piper that he's not ready to let go and say goodbye to her. And Piper is being really sweet. She has her hand right next to his face and she's like, close your eyes. Just imagine that, I'm touching you, I'm caressing your cheek or whatever. A very sweet, intimate moment. And their faces and lips like get closer together. And at the same time, like Tony's group barge into the house and take Piper. Prue and Phoebe like hear all the commotion, run downstairs, and Mark tells them like, oh, they took her. We have to go find her. So at the warehouse, Piper basically asks Tony why you killed Mark, and Tony tells her that he needed somebody to, so he needed to fake his death, and, he needed Mark's body. He had this whole plan to move to Hong Kong, and blames Piper that she screwed it all up. At the same time, Andy finally finds the envelope with Tony's picture, and they're like rushing to the warehouse too. So Prue and Phoebe are at the warehouse. Two of Tony's men like try to shoot them, but Prue uses her powers to like throw them across the room. They're running upstairs. Prue uses her powers to the door. That also kind of like hits two men that are behind the door. And as they're entering, Tony takes a shot and Piper manages to get her hands untied and she freezes the room. And which is the first time that we see like her powers being cool like that. Because you see the bullet flying out of the gun, but it's frozen mid-air, like targeting Prue. Really, really cool. Obviously, they get out of the way, but the freezing doesn't last too long, so it hits like a statue. When Piper froze the room, Phoebe, Prue were in front of Tony, but now they're behind him, so he gets, surprised that they were behind him, and he moves out of the way, and Prue uses her powers to like throw him down the stairs, and he's running outside. And as he's outside, there's like police officers like circling him, and he tries to shoot Andy, but Andy shoots him, and he dies. And we see his spirit leaving his body. So now the sisters and Mark are on a balcony, like above everything happening, and Piper makes a pretty funny comment of like, "I've never seen anybody die," and Phoebe reminds her of Jeremy, and Prue reminds her of Javna. Piper is like, "I'm inhuman," but they're like, we have to leave, we cannot be found here. So we see the sisters and Mark like running downstairs from the back door. And as they're running to flee, Tony's spirit and Mark's spirit finally meet. And Tony's like, bro, you dead. And Mark is like, yeah, so do you, bro. Yama shows up and Mark grabs Tony's spirit and like throws it on the spear that Yama is carrying. And Yama takes Tony's spirit, but he's not satisfied yet, so he's pointing the spear towards Mark, and Piper gets in the way and she's like, no, he's a good man, do not take him, he doesn't deserve to be with you, like basically protecting him, right? And the other two sisters circle Mark as well, so like now the three charmed ones are protecting Mark, and Yama is looking at them, and then he backs off and disappears. Period, charmed ones, you protected a ghost. I love that for you. So we are at Mark's funeral. His family and friends are there. The sisters are there. They're hearing the eulogy or, somebody talking about Mark. And it's very sad. And we see Mark's mom crying. And Mark tells her, obviously she cannot hear him, but like basically thanks her for everything that she taught him and all the stories that she taught him about spirits and the afterlife. Basically saved his soul. So as Mark walks back to the sisters, he tells Prue to remember to celebrate herself and her birthday and how precious birthdays really are and getting old, how precious that is. And Mark and Piper wish they have met each other when they were both alive and how different things will be. There's a guy that appears. And let me say this, okay? The way he appears, that we later find out that was Mark's father, that he's there to take him to the afterlife. Girl, the way he appears smiling. He looks like freaking Art the Clown, the Terrifier. I'm not gonna say it got jump scared, but like it was concerning. I was watching and like there was a man that appears smiling. I'm like, that's Art the Clown. That's the Terrifier. Like, what are we doing? Phoebe asks like, who's that man? And Mark is like, oh, that's my dad. Mark walks up to him and we see them like crossing over. We see the spirits like disappear, meaning Mark crossed over to the afterlife. And, we see Piper being super sad, understandably so. And she says, "Leave it to me to fall for the dead man, or the dead guy." And Phoebe's like, "Well, that's an improvement over a warlock." And I'm like, "Phoebe, no, it's not the time for that. It's not the time." But it's a pretty cute scene. So now we're at the end of the episode. The sisters return to the manor, and Prue tells her sisters that, "I wish we actually, had the party. I've changed my mind. This whole situation with Mark has made me appreciate, parties and whatever, or growing up." And Piper's like, "Oh, so funny you said that." And there's a bunch of people there surprising Prue for her birthday, including Andy. And Piper's like, "Did I get ya?" Prue's like, "Yeah, you got me." Phoebe gives her present. And it's just a very nice conclusion to the episode. And it closes with, Andy and Prue looking at each other and, basically celebrating Prue's birthday. So now, let's go to the analysis part. All right. Let me just preface by saying this. This is a very Piper-focused episode, and I adore that. I love Piper. Piper is my favorite character of Charmed of all times. Not just because of her powers, but because of who she is, and who she becomes later on in the seasons. So I am very happy there is a very Piper-focused episode. So we explore many different themes in this episode, like love, loss, secrets, pain, all many different emotions and things that are very important to explore. And more specifically, we also see for the first time how demons and warlocks are not the only evil beings in the world, right? In the Charmed universe, or even in our universe, right? If you think about it, because there was no evil demon in this episode. Everything that happened was caused by a human being. Somebody with no powers, somebody that was not come from evil, if you will, but is evil and killed a human life and tried to escape, right? So it's very, very interesting to see how different the theme of this episode is comparing to the other ones, because the last three ones were with demons and evil supernatural beings, but all of the evil that happened in this episode was from humans, non-supernatural, just humans, right? Because even the concept of Yama doesn't necessarily make him evil, right? He is just an entity that is here to just take souls to the afterlife. No matter who you are, no matter how you died, no matter if you got killed, if you pass away in natural causes, it does not matter to Yama. He is just here to take you. So it's very, very interesting to see that this episode is very human focused and very a human did this, but then again the Charmed ones were able to help. Along with that, we also get some more character development of growth and connection between the sisters. Even though it's a very Piper focused episode, we also see the connection develop between Prue and Phoebe, Prue being proud of Phoebe for who she's becoming, and that she is getting more responsible, I guess, with her powers. But also, obviously, we see a huge development on Piper's part of her being the quiet, nervous, not an action person, actually being the main person that helped this ghost, cross over to the afterlife, right? Being in danger, protecting the ghost, protecting his family, all that kind of jazz. We also see how, magic cannot necessarily undo things that have happened, right? Magic could not bring Mark back to life. Unfortunately, that is done and over with, but magic can help, move forward, right? Because when Mark disappeared, when he moved on, Piper stayed behind, in Greek. She wasn't able to bring him back to life, but that doesn't mean she wasn't able to help. She still was able to help, but this also makes us understand that there's limits to magic. Again, they're not gods to, bring somebody back to life. It's very much we're here to help. As far as power breakdown, Phoebe, very confusing. I don't know if she was actually getting premonitions for all the fortune she was reading for the customers of the hotel, or if she was just joking. Don't really know how that works, but she got different premonitions from the customers at the hotel. more specifically Mr. Corey's premonitions, and then also where the warehouse is that Tony is located at. Then for Prue, she used her powers like 4 times, if you will. One with the trolley. 4 times or 3 times? One with the trolley, the men at the warehouse, the door, and then Tony. So I think that's 4. And then Piper 3 times. The first time she froze Yama, the man and Tony when she did the newspaper thing, and then when she froze the bullet that was, going to hit Prue. Some continuity errors that they were like not a big deal, but it was pretty funny, was the concept of ghosts here, right? So we see Mark going through a door at, mid episode when they're in the kitchen at the Halliwell Manor. But then when they're at the police station, Piper has to open the door for him to get in the car. So that's kind of weird, right? So can he go through objects? Can he not go through objects? He gets like a mug thrown at him and it goes through him. There's a bike that goes through him, but then again, in Piper's car, he has to get the door open for him. Interesting. The other thing that also was, I feel like, a continuity error, which again, Piper's my favorite character. Her power is my favorite, but she's able to freeze Yama, but not Mark. And later on, we see that happen with Leo too. Like, she can freeze Leo, but sometimes he doesn't. So I'm assuming that could be more of like her, like if somebody's with her, they don't freeze. If that makes sense. I don't know. I feel like that's also a continuity error, which again, I'm just pointing it out there. I'm sure there's other ones that I always miss, but like I just bring up stuff that are interesting to me. But overall, I feel like it's one of my favorite episodes from the first season. I just love how Piper focused it is. I love Piper, like I've said a million times before, but also I like the idea of the episode. Yes, it could have been done better. It was a very good episode overall. Again, I also like how Prue also understands responsibility and like accountability, because at first she's very upset with Andy for not telling her that she has a wife, that he has an ex-wife, but like she also understands that she keeps a secret from Andy every single day and she very much likely are not able to tell him ever, right? So again, I feel like it was a great episode. I very, very much enjoyed it. It's also very nice to see the connection between the actors for Piper and Mark. It seems like they have a lot of chemistry, which is very refreshing. So I would definitely give this episode like 8.5 out of 10. 8.5 to 9 out of 10. It is one of my like favorite episodes of the first season. My other favorite episode will probably surprise you, and that will be probably one of the few people that really likes that episode, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So, that was my take on the 4th episode of Charmed. Please drop your thoughts, comments, questions, concerns below in the comments. And if you want more movie and TV show reviews, please subscribe to the Rewatch Party. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everyone.